This happened just a few weeks ago. I'm 32 and usually pretty comfortable in nature, thanks to years of photography trips. I was excited to explore and capture the beauty of these old cabins, which I found on an old trail map online. It seemed like they held stories waiting to be told. I've never stopped thinking about what happened that first night. I set up my gear in a dusty old cabin. Everything was quiet. Just me and the woods. The sun dipped below the tree line, and shadows stretched across the wooden floor. I took a few photos, feeling happy in that stillness. As darkness settled in, I made a quick dinner and turned in early. Around midnight, I heard something. Footsteps, maybe. I wasn't sure. My heart raced. I told myself it was probably just a raccoon. The cabin creaked around me. I thought about how eerie it was, being alone in that old place. Then I caught a glimpse of something moving outside. I quickly turned off my flashlight and stared through the grimy window. But there was nothing there. I shook it off and tried to sleep. The next day, I wandered to a nearby cabin I had seen earlier. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The air felt heavy, and my skin prickled. I looked around and noticed strange carvings on the walls. They looked like symbols, like something you'd see in a horror movie. I suddenly felt watched, and it unnerved me. I backed out of the cabin slowly, keeping my eyes on the shadows inside. I figured it was just my imagination. That night, I kept hearing that rustling sound again, louder this time. It felt close. I listened for a while, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Then I thought I saw something move just beyond the trees. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside. "Hello?" I called. My voice echoed back, but the woods answered with silence. Then I saw a shadow behind the trees, a figure just standing there. I called out again, "Hello? Is anyone there?" I felt my heart pound in my chest. It didn't answer. I blinked, and it was gone. Just like that. I spun around, breathing hard, and saw nothing but the trees. It was like a bad dream, the kind you can't shake off. I stumbled back to the cabin, feeling something might be lurking right behind me. I could feel the weight of the silence pressing down. Every corner of the cabin felt unfamiliar now. Was I really alone? Or was something watching me? I spent the night waking up at every tiny noise, debating whether I imagined it all or if the woods truly hold something inexplicable. The following morning, I awoke to a gray light filtering through the cracks in the cabin walls. I felt exhausted, yet my mind buzzed with restless energy. I needed to figure out what was happening. I decided to venture back to the cabin with the strange carvings. Maybe I could find a clue, something that made sense of everything. As I walked, I felt the brush of cool air against my skin. It was odd, like the woods were shifting, alive in a way I hadn't noticed before. I reached the cabin and hesitated at the door. It wasn't ajar anymore. I pushed it open carefully, half expecting it to creak loudly. But it was quiet. Too quiet. Once inside, the symbols on the wall seemed to pulse with an energy I couldn't understand. I stepped closer to inspect them, feeling drawn to their chaotic patterns. I wished I had brought my camera, but part of me was glad I hadn't. I didn't want to capture whatever this was, it felt wrong. I carefully traced one with my fingers. Just then, a gust of wind rattled through the cabin, slamming the door shut behind me. I jumped, startled. My heartbeat quickened, and I glanced over my shoulder. There was no one there. Only shadows stretched and twisted in the faint light. Then, I heard a low, growling whisper. It was almost as if the walls were speaking. I strained to listen, my heart dropping into my stomach. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, until I couldn't make out a single word. Panic surged through me, and I turned to leave. But I stopped short. In the corner of the room, near a broken window, lay a small object gleaming in the light. I moved closer, my curiosity overpowering the fear still lurking in my mind. It was a locket, tarnished and worn, with a faded photo inside. A woman's face stared back at me, eerily familiar. I froze, chills creeping up my spine. As I studied the photo, a crashing sound echoed from outside. I jumped again, clutching the locket tightly. I slipped it into my pocket and rushed back to the door. I peeked outside, my breath catching in my throat. There, in the distance, stood the figure once more. It was clearer now, almost solid. I swallowed hard, a feeling of dread pooling in my gut. The figure watched me, unmoving, as if waiting for something. I felt a tug of recognition, but it only deepened my fear. I glanced around, calculating my escape. Before I could make a decision, the whispering picked up again, filling my mind with rage and confusion. It was as if whatever was happening was beckoning me, luring me closer to its secrets. I couldn't just stand there. That's when I heard the sound again, something rushing through the underbrush, coming my way. Instinct kicked in. I ran back to the cabin, slamming the door behind me. I was safe for the moment, but I could still hear the whispers, growing louder and more insistent. Then everything went dark. The sunlight vanished in an instant, shrouding me in complete blackness. I stumbled toward the window, but the shadows felt alive, dragging at my feet. Panic took hold as I fumbled for my flashlight. Where was the light? My mind raced with questions, and I felt I was losing grip on reality. I fumbled and finally found it, turning it on in a hurry. But I froze as the beam hit something in the corner of the cabin. It wasn't just the wall. No, it was a darker shadow, more menacing. And it was no longer just a whisper. Now, it was a roar. The roar enveloped me, a deep, echoing sound that shook the very air in the cabin. I struggled to breathe. My heart raced as I pointed the flashlight at the corner. The shadow moved slightly, revealing a shape that was not human, a twisted form that seemed to sway before solidifying again. I stepped back, my instincts screaming at me to run. But my feet felt glued to the floor. The darkness pressed in, thickening like a fog. I had to find a way out. I turned to the door, but the whispers had blended into a cacophony, a chorus of warning and dread that paralyzed me. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice trembling. There was no answer, just that shadow, that menacing figure. I glanced back at the locket in my pocket, remembering the woman's face. Could this be connected? Was she the key to understanding what was happening here? Suddenly, the figure lunged forward, a streak of dark shadow bursting into motion. I spun around and dashed toward a window, desperate for escape. The beam of my flashlight quivered as I aimed it at the twisting shape. My breath was heavy, but I kept running, ignoring the pain in my chest. I had to get out. As I reached the window, a strange compulsion pulled me back, as if the carvings on the walls had a hold on me. I glanced at them one last time. The symbols now glowed faintly, illuminating the room with an eerie light. I didn't know what they meant, but I felt their significance deep within. No time. I shoved my shoulder against the window, willing it to break. My heart raced as I heard the figure slam against the door behind me. The wood creaked and splintered, creating a deafening noise that echoed around the room. I felt the fresh rush of adrenaline surge through me as I forced the window open, shards of glass crunching beneath my hands. Just as I climbed through the opening, the door burst open, and the shadow rushed forward, but I was out. I stumbled onto the ground, pain shooting up my legs as I hit the forest floor. With one look back, I could see the shadow, now standing at the window, pulsing with a darkness that seemed to consume the light. I took off, weaving between trees, pushing my body harder than I ever thought possible. I didn't stop to question where I was running. I just needed distance needed to escape that figure and whatever sinister pull it had over me. After what felt like hours, I finally reached a clearing, panting and disoriented. I leaned against a tree, trying to gather my thoughts. Was I safe? Or was it following me? I pulled out the locket, needing to understand what had just happened. That S when I saw it, an inscription on the back that I hadn't noticed before. I took a deep breath, the weight of whatever lay ahead settling on my shoulders. I wiped the sweat from my brow and squinted at the text. It read, "To remind you of the past, whether you want it or not." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. The past? Why did that matter? As I pondered this, the whispers returned, eerie and distant, blending into the rustling leaves. Whatever was happening was far from over, and I was right in the middle of it. I had stumbled onto something far bigger than I understood. And something was still watching me. I stood in the clearing, heart racing, nerves thrumming like a tight wire. The woods were silent, but I could still feel the weight of the shadow lurking somewhere nearby. It was as if the trees themselves had ears, listening to my every breath. I examined the locket again, the inscription burning in my mind. The past? Did this mean I had been here before? Every rustle in the leaves sounded like a distant whisper of memories I couldn't grasp. The air was still, but it felt electric, charged with something ominous. I stumbled back a few paces, scanning the edges of the clearing for any sign of movement. At that moment, something caught my eye, a flicker of light, barely noticeable through the dense trees to my left. My instinct told me to investigate, even though every part of me screamed to flee. There was something compelling about it, an urge to discover the truth behind whatever was happening. I stepped carefully, avoiding roots and fallen branches. Each crunch underfoot grated against the stillness, heightening my anxiety. The light grew brighter as I approached, swirling like a soft glow beckoning me closer. And then, I saw it, a small, dilapidated cabin, much like the one I had just escaped. This one was different, though. Where the last cabin exuded dread, this one seemed almost serene, bathed in the gentle light that spilled from the window. I felt an odd sense of familiarity creeping in. I crept up to the door, my hand hovering, hesitating before the knob. I glanced behind me, half expecting the shadow to emerge. It was silent. Unnaturally so. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The inside was dark, but the warm light emanated from a single lantern sitting on a table. The room was sparse, containing little more than a few chairs and an old desk. My eyes landed on a photograph pinned to the wall. A woman, she looked remarkably like the face in the locket. I stepped closer, the details sharpening in the glow. "Who are you?" I asked aloud, feeling foolish for talking to an image. Just as I turned away, a soft creaking sound echoed behind me, followed by a rustle. My heart lurched. Was someone here? Is anyone there? I called out, trying to keep the tremor from my voice. Silence loomed heavy over the cabin, pressing against me like the darkness had before. I turned back, ready to bolt out the door. That S when I noticed a small journal lying on the desk. It was slightly open, as if someone had just been writing in it. Compelled, I moved forward, flipping to a random page. The handwriting was hurried but legible. It spoke of things I couldn't comprehend, shadows, memories, and connections to the past. My fingers tingled as I traced the words. But then something caught my eye, a familiar symbol, one I remembered from the carvings in the last cabin. My heart began to race again. I heard a rustle behind me. The door, barely hanging on its hinges, slowly swung open. The warm light flickered, and the whispers that had haunted me earlier returned, clearer now, wrapping around me like a cold embrace. I turned, and the air froze in my lungs. Standing at the doorway was the shadow, larger than before, eyes gleaming with an unholy light. My heart thundered in my chest as the whispering intensified, and dread washed over me. I suddenly understood. The past had come to collect me. And there was no escaping it. The shadow loomed larger, pulsating with a dark energy that made my blood run cold. I felt the urge to run, but my feet refused to move. I was trapped, held captive by fear and the heavy presence that filled the room. "Who are you?" I managed to choke out, voice barely a whisper. The shadow shifted, its eyes piercing into me, and in that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of recognition. It was as if I was staring into a mirror of my own past. The whispers grew louder, echoing in my mind. I turned back to the journal, desperate for answers. My fingers trembled as I rifled through the pages. The shadow stepped closer, and the warmth of the lantern flickered, casting eerie shapes across the room. Then, I found something. A name: Amara. I stared at the letters, my heart racing. This was the name from the locket, the name that had been haunting my dreams. But what did it mean? Was she the woman in the photograph? The shadow shifted again, and I could almost hear a voice emerging from the darkness. "You must remember," it murmured, deep and raspy. "I don't remember anything." I shouted back, anger bubbling beneath my fear. The shadow seemed to recoil, leaving a moment of silence hanging in the air. I could still feel the weight of its gaze, though, urging me to dig deeper, to face the truths hiding beneath the surface. I grabbed the journal again, pages now crinkling under my grasp. It detailed strange rituals and encounters, notes on the connection between realms, the ability to interact with those lost in time. I could feel the weight of the significance pressing down on me, pushing me to understand. That S when I noticed a loose page tucked inside the journal. My breath hitched as I pulled it free. It was a sketch, a drawing of the very cabin I stood in, but with intricate details I hadn't noticed before. Symbols adorned the walls and the furniture, and at the center was a circle, filled with more of those strange markings. "Amara," I whispered, realization dawning on me. I touched the edge of the sketch, and my vision blurred for a moment before snapping back into focus. The shadow was closer now, its presence feeling almost impatient. With a sudden rush of clarity, I turned to face it. "What happened to you?" I asked. "Is this your home?" The air thickened, and the shadow wavered. For a split second, I thought I could see a face forming, a mix of sadness and anger. Then, without warning, it surged forward, invading my personal space. I stumbled back and hit the desk, sending the lantern crashing to the floor. The light sputtered and flickered out, plunging the room into darkness. Panic swallowed me whole. I scrambled for the door, but the shadow was there, blocking my escape. "I need to know." I yelled into the void, desperation creeping into my voice. The whispering stopped suddenly, and for a moment, the suffocating silence seemed to press against my ears. Then came a flash from the corner of my eye. I turned, and I saw the locket begin to glow with a faint light. It pulsed rhythmically, syncing with my heartbeat. I reached for it, understanding dawning on me. A piece of me recognized this place, this shadow. And if I ever wanted to escape, I had to confront whatever truth bound me here. With a surge of courage, I stepped forward, into the shadow's grasp, ready to uncover the past I had been fearing. The moment I stepped into the shadow, a jolt of energy surged through me. It felt like diving into frigid water, my breath hitching in my throat. Instead of darkness, a kaleidoscope of images whirled around me, flickering like a faulty film reel. I saw glimpses of a woman, her face strikingly familiar. "Amara." "Remember," the shadow urged again, but this time the voice held a hint of urgency, like a warning. I felt my heart race, the air swirling thick with memories that weren't my own. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to ground myself, trying to figure out what all this meant. As I opened my eyes, I found myself standing not in the cabin, but in a glade at the edge of a vast forest. It was daylight here, sunlight filtering through the leaves, creating patterns on the ground. In the center stood a stone altar, worn but meticulously kept, as if someone had performed rituals here recently. My breath caught as I noticed the familiar symbols etched into the stone, just like the ones from the sketch. In the next moment, I was back in the cabin, the shadow pulsating with intensity. What is this place? I shouted, but it didn't answer. Instead, the air crackled, forming an electric tension around us. I realized the locket still glowed, its light somehow bridging the two realms, this mysterious forest and the cabin. It felt like the key to unlocking secrets trapped in time. With trembling hands, I opened it and stared at the tiny portrait inside. The woman in the photograph looked directly at me, her eyes filled with an anguish I couldn't decipher. Suddenly, the shadow began to shift, molding itself into a more human shape. The outlines of a face emerged, the features tormented yet ethereal. I was no longer just afraid, I felt compassion. This entity was bound to something just like I was. Amara, I whispered, reaching out, desperate to connect. You were here. You're still here. The figure nodded, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between us. And then, in a soft, haunting echo, I heard the whispered words return, resonating in the chamber of my mind. You must release me. With those words, a surge of anger surged through me. How? How can I help you? What happened here? The shadow hesitated, then tilted its head toward the altar. My confusion turned to dread as my gaze followed its direction. Memories of the rituals began flooding back. I saw fleeting images: Amara, a group of people, a binding spell gone wrong, the chants echoing into the night. Everything spiraled out of control when a sudden commotion echoed from outside. The door creaked open, and light spilled into the cabin. My heart dropped, I wasn't alone. Someone stepped in, silhouetted against the fading light. Who's there? I shouted, panic flooding my voice. But the figure remained still, a dark shadow against the glow. I glanced back at the apparition before me, now flickering with urgency. I need you to trust me. It implored. Stop them before it's too late. The urgency in the voice propelled me into action. I needed to confront whatever darkness lay ahead if I was to understand Amara's fate and escape this torment. I turned toward the intruder, ready to demand answers, but my heart raced with uncertainty. What do you want? I called out, but all I could hear was silence. Then, from the depths of that silence, came a low, sinister laugh that made my skin crawl. It wasn't just the shadow I had to worry about anymore. The laughter echoed around the cabin, a chilling sound that wrapped itself around me like a cold, clammy blanket. I stood frozen, every instinct screaming at me to flee. But the figure at the door stirred, casting a wider shadow across the room. What do you want? I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. The figure stepped into the dim light, revealing a man with hollow cheeks and dark, piercing eyes. A smile crept across his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. I felt the air tighten around me, a palpable sense of dread settling in. Ah, the curious one, he said, his voice smooth but laced with malice. You shouldn't have come here. You've disturbed something that was meant to stay hidden. I took a tentative step back, glancing at the shadow of Amara. Her form flashed with urgency, silently urging me to make a decision. I needed to understand. What do you mean? Who are you? He chuckled, a sound filled with dark amusement. A friend of the lost, he replied cryptically. And it seems your little adventure has awakened more than just your curiosity. Awakened? I echoed, my panic rising. What does that mean? The man stepped closer, his shadow swallowing the cabin's light. The rituals done here have long-lasting effects, dear girl. Some echoes remain. Others, he motioned toward the shadow, are not so easily appeased. I felt the urge to break for the door, but Amara's presence held me steady. I'm here to help her, I asserted, trying to keep the quaver from my voice. Let her go. The man's smile twisted into a scowl. You think freedom lies within your grasp? How naive. The bonds that tie her are far stronger than your will. Then, without warning, he lunged forward, reaching out with long fingers. I ducked to the side, heart racing. The shadow of Amara surrounded me, condensing into a swirling tempest. "Don't let him touch you," she cried, her voice mingling with the wind. "He's the one who bound me." A sudden rush of energy coursed through me, fueled by my desperation to understand the truth. I grasped the locket tightly, feeling its warmth surge in response. "I need to break the bond," I shouted. "How do I do that?" The man halted, the amusement fading from his expression. "You dare challenge the ancient ties? Fine. But know this, the truth has a price." Before I could respond, he jerked his hand back, and darkness exploded around me. The cabin shattered into pieces, dissolving into an endless void. I felt myself plummeting, weightless, as the voices of the past swirled around chants, cries, and Amara's desperate pleas for help. Then everything went dark. I couldn't tell up from down, and panic surged through me. Where was I? Was this the end? And just when I thought I would lose consciousness, a blinding light pierced through the darkness, illuminating a path. That's when I saw it. Amara's voice called from the other side, filled with urgency. "The altar. You have to reach it." I kicked and flailed, forcing myself towards the light. The remnants of the cabin faded away, replaced by the stone altar from my vision. Realization struck me hard. This could be my chance to untangle the threads binding her to the darkness. But I also knew there was no way back. Outside, the sinister man lingered in the shadows. I took a breath, heart pounding, ready to confront whatever waited on the other side. I stepped onto the altar's cool stone, feeling the energy pulse beneath me. The air was thick with the weight of bygone rituals, and the smell of damp earth filled my senses. A tangle of emotions surged within me: fear, determination, hope. Amara's voice was still echoing in my mind, pushing me forward. "Trust your instincts. Focus on the bond," she urged, her presence flickering like a candle in the wind. With a deep breath, I placed my hands on the altar. The surface was rough but warm, almost alive. "What do I need to do?" I whispered, expecting an answer. Silence enveloped me, yet I could feel something shifting in the air. I closed my eyes, letting the uneasiness wash over me. Images flooded my mind: snippets of memories, long-forgotten prayers, and faces twisted in anguish. Each vision chiseled away at my resolve. I could sense the darkness prowling just beyond the altar, the figure of the man waiting. "Amara, you have to help me find the connection. What binds you to this place?" I called out, desperation creeping into my voice. Suddenly, I felt a surge of warmth from the locket. It glowed brightly against my chest, illuminating my surroundings. In that light, I caught a glimpse of a figure behind me, a flicker of a shadow lingering at the edge of the altar's glow. "No!" Amara shouted. "He's coming." I spun around just as the man emerged from the shadows. His expression was twisted with fury. "You think you can break my hold on her? I will not allow it." His voice reverberated, causing the very stones of the altar to tremble. I clenched my jaw and faced him, fear threatening to unravel me. "You don't have any power here," I declared, holding the locket up like a shield. "I will free her." The man's laughter filled the space, echoing harshly. "You're bold for a simple girl. But the truth, as I said, comes with a price." Before I could respond, he lunged again, his fingers outstretched. I braced myself, and the locket flared with brilliant light, pushing him back. "You need to find the words." Amara's voice called to me, urgency rising in her cadence. The words of the binding spell. Panic washed over me. How could I possibly remember something like that? I began to dig through my memories, trying to recall anything about the rituals that had taken place in this very spot. Then it clicked: I remembered the whispers, the phrases laced with sorrow and longing. The binding to the echoes of the past must cease. I shouted, feeling the words rise in my throat. The ties of grief must break. The altar vibrated violently. The man recoiled, his face contorting in rage and fear. No! You fool! You don't understand what you're doing. But it was too late. The energy swirling around me intensified, merging with the locket's glow. I felt Amara's presence envelop me, solidifying my resolve. I repeated the phrase, louder this time. The air crackled with energy, shaking the darkness around us. The man screamed, the shadows shuddered, and I knew I was on the brink of breaking the binding. But just as I felt the tide turning, his voice pierced through the chaos, filled with chilling desperation. You'll regret this. You'll never escape the consequences. And then, everything erupted into blinding light. The light enveloped me completely, and for a moment, I felt weightless. It was as if I was being torn away from reality itself. I could hear the man's voice fading, a mixture of anger and despair that mirrored the chaos swirling inside me. Just as quickly as it began, the blinding light faded into a deep, all-consuming darkness. I gasped as I hit the ground. The cool stone of the altar was gone, replaced by the soft tickle of grass beneath me. I blinked several times, trying to adjust to the dim light of a waning moon. I felt disoriented, as if I had been cast back to a different time and place. Amara? I called, my voice shaky. I needed reassurance. Was she still there? The weight of her absence pressed down on me like a stone. A soft sound reached my ears, the soft rustle of leaves. I turned, scanning my surroundings. It was peaceful here, almost too serene compared to what I'd just experienced. I was in a small clearing surrounded by towering trees, the air smelling sweet and earthy. But something was off. The shadows felt too thick, the night too quiet. Amara. I breathed again, stepping forward. My heart raced as I felt a prick of fear. Had I truly broken the binding? Or had I only moved it to a different plane? Then I spotted it a glimmer in the underbrush. The locket. It lay abandoned, its warm glow replaced by a dull coldness. I rushed over and picked it up, my fingers brushing against its surface. But it felt odd, heavier somehow, as if it had absorbed the weight of the past I had released. Suddenly, a noise cut through the silence. A low growl echoed from the trees, followed by a series of footsteps, heavy and deliberate. I froze. Panic clawed at me. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice wavering. No response came, but the growling grew louder. I glanced around, looking for something, anything to protect myself. My heart raced as I remembered the man's warnings. What had he unleashed? I took a step back, and that's when I saw it, a pair of glowing eyes peering at me from within the shadows. My breath caught in my throat. The silhouette was vaguely human but so distorted. It moved closer, and I could see its features twisted, almost painful to behold. "Stop. Stay back," I said, raising the locket between us as if it could ward off whatever this was. Its growl turned into something like a roar, a sound that made the very air tremble. "Amara, help me," I cried out, though I doubted she could hear me. Just then, the creature lunged forward, and I stumbled back, heart hammering wildly in my chest. And that's when the locket burst into brilliant light again, a comforting warmth flooding through me. I had one last chance. The binding to the echoes of the past must cease. I yelled defiantly, hoping this ritual could still protect me. But as the light spread outward, I saw the creature hesitate, confusion flickering across its distorted features. It faltered for just a moment, and in that instant, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe it could be reached. But before I could process that thought, the world around me shifted yet again. Then everything went dark. When consciousness returned, I was lying on a soft patch of grass, surrounded by darkness and the distant sound of water. I blinked, trying to place myself. The moon hung high above, casting gentle light through the trees into the clearing where I found myself. For a moment, I was relieved. Had I escaped? But the silence felt wrong. It wrapped around me like a cold blanket, and a lingering dread lingered in the air. I sat up slowly, brushing dirt from my clothes. The locket lay beside me. I picked it up, feeling the familiar cool, heavy weight in my palm. It was strangely comforting, yet the sheen on its surface had dulled, as if it had absorbed all the turmoil I had just experienced. "Amara?" I called into the emptiness. The night only echoed back with unsettling silence. Had the binding truly been broken? Or had Amara been lost, trapped within the darkness I had fled? Memories of the shadow surged in my mind, the figure, the whispers, the urgency of the ritual echoed in my thoughts, mingling with new doubts. What if I hadn't managed to free her at all? A shiver ran down my spine as I glanced around, half expecting to see the creature lurking in the shadows. Breathing hard, I got to my feet, intent on finding a way out of this forsaken place. But as I took a step, I felt the ground tremble beneath me. Panic surged again. The woods felt alive, and a low rumble rolled through the air, like the echo of distant thunder. This wasn't over. I moved through the trees, keeping my senses sharp. As I walked, the path seemed to twist and turn, becoming familiar yet hauntingly foreign. Was I lost? I yearned for the safety of the cabin, somehow missing the very place that had terrified me only hours before. The dull glow of the moon illuminated a clearing, and as I stepped in, my breath caught. Before me stood the stone altar from my visions, even more imposing than I remembered. The air was heavier here, crackling with energy that felt almost alive. "Why am I back?" I murmured, the weight of the locket a constant reminder of the choices I had made. Had I undone something? Could I reverse the curse that lingered in the woods, waiting to reclaim me? With shaky hands, I approached the altar, the glimmering symbols I had seen before now etched deeper into the stone. It felt like an invitation. As I touched its surface, a sense of connection rippled through me, evoking a bittersweet longing for answers I desperately needed. "Amara," I whispered into the night. "You have to help me find you." In that moment, I felt something shift. The shadows around me deepened, swirling with stories of the past and the echoes of lives intertwined in this world. It wasn't just a binding, it was a reminder of connections that ran deeper than fear. Suddenly, the air crackled with buzz, and shadows stretched toward me, forming into suspected outlines of figures I had seen in my visions, faces blurred, expressions filled with longing and despair. Caught between dread and curiosity, I steeled myself. "I will find you," I vowed. "I will free you." The locket started to pulse, reacting to my words as if the echoes of the past recognized my intent. Then, without warning, the figures lunged forward, engulfing me in shadows, and I felt myself being pulled into the memories that echoed around the altar. A flash of images whirled through my mind: Amara, laughing with others, then a dark gathering, a ritual gone awry. The voices rushed in, their whispers coalescing into a single chant that resonated within me. "Remember us," they all seemed to echo. Light erupted from the locket again, casting the shadows back and illuminating the altar. I focused on the rising chaos within, the voices begging to be heard, people lost in the bonds of the past. They spoke of forgiveness, of understanding, and the choice to lay down burdens unclaimed. Suddenly, the overpowering sense of dread, of the ominous figure from before, washed over me again. I felt it creeping closer, lurking in the shadows. But now, it was different. "Face it," I whispered, "whatever you are." An echo of the man's voice, cold and merciless, filled the clearing. "You think you can rewrite history?" "I don't need to rewrite anything," I declared, inseparable from the pulse of strength rising from within. "I just need to understand." And at that moment, everything shifted. The air thickened with anticipation, the shadows swirled in anticipation, and my resolve deepened. I inhaled deeply. "You are not in control here." As I spoke these words, they reverberated through the clearing, causing the shadows to recoil. The locket flared brighter than ever before, flickering with a light that shattered the darkness. The figure from my nightmares stretched backward, almost imperceptibly, as if my defiance weakened its hold. The whispers enveloped me again, this time not chaotic but harmonious, lifting me with their essence. They felt like a guiding hand. And I saw her Amara emerging from the abyss of shadows, her own light intertwined with that of the locket. In the ultimation of that moment, clarity washed over me. I could break the bonds. The power had always been within me, I just had to wield it wisely. I focused on Amara, sending a wave of energy through my intentions. Let us claim the past and set you free. The pulse from the locket traveled outwards, enveloping the clearing in warm light. I felt Amara's presence deepen beside me, her essence mingling with mine as our determination interwove. But the eyes of the darkness still glinted with malevolence, and shadows flared around us. You'll never escape, it hissed, rage spilling forth. The ground trembled with a profound intensity. I was surrounded by both the past and the unknown, the echoes rising into a frenetic dance. Every pulse of light drew Amara closer to the forefront of the shadows. I will not allow you to break us. The figure screamed, but my defiance surged even stronger. This ends now. I shouted, my voice ringing out across the clearing, drowning out the growl amid the chaos. The light from the locket pulsed one last time, illuminating both shadows and memories. And as it met the darkness of the looming figure, I felt something shift. The air rushed back, breaking the spell. And then silence. The shadows dispersed, leaving the clearing illuminated in moonlight, tranquil yet charged with residual energy. I opened my eyes, trembling, and saw Amara standing beside me, free of the shadows, her gaze soft yet determined. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice echoing through the quiet. But the night felt elongated, like the calm before a storm. Questions twisted in my mind, feelings of unease settling in the pit of my stomach. What had I truly released? What did it mean for us both? "I don't know what comes next," I admitted softly, glancing at the locket still clutched tightly in my hand. "Neither do I," she replied, a hint of uncertainty and resolve in her eyes. "But at least we now walk together." In that moment, we stood at the threshold of something unknown, a path uncertain yet filled with promise. The fabric of the past tangled with our new reality, and as dawn approached, I couldn't shake the feeling that our journey had just begun. And some questions would remain suspended, waiting for answers, for the echoes of the past never truly fade, they linger, weaving through lives like a persistent whisper amidst a silenced night.